All right, welcome back to another episode of the Cameo podcast. I'm ramping it up here for 2019, starting off with a bang. Got lots booked. And thank you once again to readyatdoor.com, the local food delivery service. If you want, to not cook, they'll bring you whatever restaurants they have listed, and you can save $5 off your first order if you use the promo code CAMEO. Now, my next guest who's sitting across from me, his father also has a food delivery service, but it's very organic. His father would be Dudy, and I'm meeting with Ryan. Sorry, Ryan, for making that correlation off the get-go. Ryan and I met on Instagram because he likes taking photos of milkweeds.
Among other things, but yeah.
Yeah, so Ryan, tell us about yourself. The show's about meeting different Kamloopsians, and how do you describe yourself if you introduce yourself at a party?
Well, I'd say that I'm 36, and I've been living here most of my life. I've got a big interest in photography, and because I haven't got the money that a lot of people here in town is, I like to take pictures of the kind of the road less traveled stuff and take everyday stuff and try to make it into something more interesting. And it seems to be working for me so far. So, yeah.
But it confused me at least, because I was like, oh, here's Dudy's son. He must just be taking photos around the farm, but you don't work for him.
No, I don't. I've used the farm as a very convenient platform for being able to. There's not many other places where you can go at 4 in the morning and be able to catch a lot of the imagery that's out there, which is great. Yeah. Well, that was over the summer because, every once in a while, if you want to get the really nice pictures, it's either got to be the two times are either sunset or sunrise, and so.
Are you shooting digital or are you shooting film?
Digital, yeah. I was very lucky when I first started getting into it when I was actually still roofing at the time, and I had a friend who was cash poor, and I decided he wasn't into photography anymore and sold his very nice Canon 7D to me for $500. So I've lucked out, and I've been making good use of that since.
That's quite the steal.
Yes, yeah. So.
That camera, for anyone who should know, even on the used market, would be like, with a lens, like $1,300.
Yeah, bare minimum. Yeah, so
that's sweet. Yeah, I've got a camera collecting dust right now. A T3i. I scratched out the Rebel part because Rebel life. When did you come to Kamloops? How old were you? Because you're from the Lower Mainland.
Right? I was born in the Lower Mainland. Yeah, and that's and then we moved up to, it would have been in the early '80s. We moved up to Prince George because that was the boom town at the time. And I was up there until the very start of grade 2, so that's going back. I think we moved here in '88, so we've been in Kamloops pretty much since then. And then, other than when I graduated in 2000, I did a little bit of the typical, wandering and traveling, and spent 5 years in northern Alberta that I'll never get back. But other than that, it's mostly Kamloops is my home, and so I very much like it here. There's nowhere else like it that I've been to so far. So,
you say graduated? You mean like from college or
from high school? Here.
High school,
yeah, in West Side.
Okay, so did you ever go to a college program, or are you did you learn by just doing?
Learn by doing for the most part. I did. I kind of bounced around. I was actually worked for Greyhound for almost 15 years, which is actually what my dad used to do as well. I used to manage the one here. So I was able to go to a couple different cities, and it was an easy way to get a job. And when I was up in Grand Prairie, it actually played quite well. So it's been kind of interesting with it kind of vacating all of Western Canada in the last little while, because it was interesting. And then I've been meaning to go back to school because I did really well when I was in high school, but I've just about all of my friends that have graduated from university are also not doing that well and very much in debt, so I'm kind of biding my time too.
What would you want to go back to school for if you were to go?
Now I think education. I think I would like to teach, and probably I'm thinking at the high school level. So
there's always opportunities, I guess, like if you to go through like the trades, right? Because there's some big trades schools here in town. Like I think NorCam has like a trades program.
Yes, yeah, there is that, and I'm still leaving it open, but I've got kind of finally started instituting like a 5-year plan with my partner Danielle, and it's looking at me being back in school within that 5 years. And so,
Well, I didn't think you were 36 when I met you. I
Yeah.
was like 27.
thank you.
The hipster beard and hat, it lets you like blend in
Yeah,
with
I
the
guess
younger
so.
crowd.
I get told that at work all the time too. So,
What do you like doing around town? Like, or what issues or things about Kamloops are kind of like your thing, your peak interest, your communities?
I very much am into that kind of the sort of the close ties that Kamloops has with the outdoors without it being too commercialized. Like, I very much love the fact that you can drive pretty much anywhere from the outskirts of town within 15 minutes and you're in the middle of nowhere, and there's like between lakes and trails and everything else, there is something to do. I love going hiking, doing that kind of stuff, especially now that I've been into photography. It dovetails with everything. So now there's always, no matter what I'm doing, it's always a reason, because you can go for the perfect picture. So whether or not it's going up Ken Cartwright for a simple trip or going way out into the bush for a couple days, I mean, that's usually more my thing. I have over the next number of years, it's not so much like a hobby, but I've becoming more and more increasingly interested in advocacy for people in Kamloops that are more marginalized and have their own problems. And I think that might also be an area that I'm very much interested in, very much feel invested in as far as that goes. So
How do you keep your pulse on Kamloops? I use, like, obviously Facebook is obviously how I'm able to engage mostly, but
I'm lucky with having a councilman as a father. There's definitely that, just through discussions with him, but also, yes, using social media a lot. I'm not as active as my partner is, so there's lots of times, as far as Facebook goes, she's great as far as being able to keep me in touch that way. And then beyond that, I usually try to touch base with a lot of the different Kamloops media companies that are in town now. And then and Instagram is my primary platform. But I try to do that, and then just with knowing so many with working at Market for so many years, and then the amount of people that my dad knows, just knowing all different peoples in different parts of the community, you're able to touch base just by touching base with them. And sometimes that's a lot better than just getting like a news story or whatever else. I guess Facebook works in the same way. It's just,
totally.
Yeah.
It's crazy though how, like, far your network can reach in this town.
It's amazing, yes. And that's one thing I really like about Kamloops too, is that there's a lack of the pretentiousness that I find in a lot of other cities, whereas
it hasn't creeped in too much.
Exactly.
It exists in pockets.
Yes,
I've experienced
it.
it.
I'm sure.
Absolutely. But if you just divert your attention away from those pockets, it's like, oh, there's all this underserved attention over here. Maybe we'll go talk to them instead.
Yes. No, and because I find so many more of the people here approachable, and even and even with people that, and I don't. It's not even just because of who my dad is. I just find that even a lot of people on council are extremely approachable, and it's nice to be able to just like find community leaders or influencers and be able to talk to them too.
Well, if you just think of that, like the fact that you can touch base with any city councilor through social media on a one-to-one basis, like that's how small this town is.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
you can't do that in any other city.
No, you can't.
There would have been much more higher walls protecting those individuals, right?
Exactly, and we're in that sort of sweet spot of where it's not small town, but we're also not so big that there's that, like you were saying, that wall between us and the decision makers and the influencers. Like my girlfriend of 5 years works at the new restaurant downtown Fornham on 5th, and that's been a big new splash here in town.
Hot spot.
Yes, yeah. So even with things like that, it's been interesting with her, because so many of the different people in Kamloops from all walks of life, whether or not it's the local artist scene to people in politics and those kind of things, come through there. And she just was astonished at how many of these people she already kind of knew, whether or not it was because she's went to TRU here. And so it's really nice. Like, Kamloops has that little town but a little bit. It's like a little town, but it's big enough that there's much more of a vibrant scene and things than that too.
Well, people really just don't know who they're rubbing shoulders with.
Exactly. Actually, I think that's very true.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was lucky to have been taught who these people are through my introduction to Kamloops, which is a very irregular introduction, working at a news agency, right? Let me recognize who these people are, right? But now it's like we're at a cafe, and I've counted 3 people in the last 30 minutes who are like, those are 3 influencers in this small world that is Kamloops.
And that's very true. And it's even the example I would have was the last date night that Danielle and I had. We went to her restaurant, and just while I was there, I saw one member of City Council and then one of our MLAs and former mayor there, and we were able to just go up and talk
Terry
to
Lake.
him. Yeah. Oh, not Terry Lake. Actually, Peter Millibar.
So, Peter Millibar.
Yeah. And even though I've been introduced to him through my father, he's also just really approachable too. Because I'd be surprised if he actually remembered me through that. But it's really nice to be able to just see those people and be like, "Hi, Peter, how's it going?" And have that. And like you were saying, because for one, in Kamloops, there's not these. We don't have as many of those out of price, out of range places where the elites, quote unquote, kind of go. It's everybody, like you were saying, rubs shoulders with each other, and
well, you could look at the brownstone's prices got lowered in recent years, right? And it's much. I've been told, I haven't been ever yet, but it's much easier to go to, right?
Yes.
Or what's the other one that?
There's Terra restaurant here in
Terra.
Yep.
I've been there, 3 times with my wife now, right? And yes, it's pricier than going to somewhere else, but for a good date night,
Exactly.
for 2 people, right?
Yeah.
It's fantastic food,
Yes.
right? And you're rubbing shoulders, and it means we have a lot more power as younger folks because you're still in that bracket.
Yes, I'm still in that bracket, and I'd like to think so. Anyhow, I kind of, especially with going up north and just kind of, I feel that it wasn't like an arrested development, but I feel like I took a longer time getting to know myself than a lot of people did. And now I feel much more confident, and now, even in my 30s, it's a great feeling to kind of be getting at those things that a lot of people did when they were younger, but I don't know if I would have appreciated it as much or been able to do it with as much full attention when I was younger as I am now.
I get that. But I also feel like the internet has allowed people to take that years that it took you to learn who you are and compact it into a really small micro course.
Yes.
Done in 3 weeks and get a signed certificate. It's crazy the growth the internet allows. Where would you like to see Kamloops in 5 years?
I'd like to see Kamloops. I'd like to see it develop more of the art scene here, and I'm hoping especially with the last election, I think that that's a very big possibility, and I would like to see us more develop on our tourism end a lot more, and our cultural end, than just primary resource based, growing that way. As much as that's very much important and it's very much a part of our identity as a city, I think that especially if we want to keep on retaining our young people here and having more and more of a vibrant culture that will draw the right kind of people to Kamloops, I think that encouraging those kind of things. I know that one of the projects that I think my dad really wants to see go through is a public market, which I think would also be a great place to kind of, because the farmers market is great, not even just for local farmers whenever during the summer, but it's like an event.
Well, your dad told me you get to use the farmers market's business license, so you don't actually have to. It's like a breeding ground to test to see if your business works.
Exactly.
I just don't know if I support the whole taxpayer-funded Riverside part of things, right?
Yes,
I do support the idea of having a year-round market.
Yes.
Just, there's other ways to figure out.
Oh, yeah,
that.
and that's the whole thing. It's more with me. It's more the idea, I think, is sound and we still have to work out the details, too. So, that's the whole thing. It's nice to be able to have a lively debate on these issues, as opposed to just having it be turn into one of these kind of two sides with bumper stickers and nobody's talking to each other.
Yeah, Camus is bad for that.
Yeah,
like having the two echo chambers.
Yes, and I mean, I don't think it's just Camus. I'm pretty sure that exists in a lot of cities.
Totally.
But I think that we really need to try to get away from that kind of way of thinking, because a lot of times if you go and if you have a discussion with people with opposing views and they don't know that about you first, it's amazing if you just have a conversation first, how much easier it is to reach a consensus point if you're not just immediately identifying that person as, oh, that's one of them and they're one of those people.
Totally.
And, yeah.
They don't know the backstory.
Yes. And so I think it'd be really nice to see Counts have more opportunities for the public to have meaningful input, and it's not just, I think, not just like in the way of like public meetings and things like that, which we have and all those kind of things, but even if it's more of doing it in a more fun kind of way, or like
that's my idea of like why I want like city council meetings to be streamed on Facebook, right? Like, though they'll still be as dry as on Shaw TV.
Oh, they are very dry.
At least people who want to tune in could tune in and have micro conversations within that chat, right?
Yes, and I think, I mean, I don't know how many people are really watching Shaw 10 during the day. Anyhow, I think if you were able to do it, we've got to embrace the digital medium a lot more, because if we're going to have
they have their other one, but they just don't have the Facebook integration, which is what unfortunately is necessary, even though I hate Facebook.
Yes, and unfortunately I think you're right, because we need to have that platform where people are already, and because sometimes people are very busy, and I think that sometimes it's got to be a little bit of a helping hand to keep them interested, because sometimes just those few extra steps, especially if it's not immediately apparent for people how to take those steps, it just means that they're just not going to do it.
Which is why it's very interesting to me, because like, you know, chatting with all the city councilors, getting to see who brought attention and who didn't was super fascinating. And what's even more fascinating is my friend Mike Erickson still retains the most listened to podcast I have, more than the mayor, more than Ed the Sock, right? Like that's, you know, like it. You know, his wife was like, "Why does Nevin want to talk to you?" Right? It's like, people don't realize you got to level with them. Like, you know, when it comes to like communication, right? Like, even my podcast is a little bit too upper level for people until I actually translate it to Facebook. Does it actually, you know, start to engage, right? But
and I think I definitely think, because I even find this with myself, because when I got really into podcasts, one of the reasons that I really got it, like, for lack of another way, glommed onto it, was that it was still at such an entry level that with a lot of the podcasts I started listening to, even if they weren't based out of Counts or whatever, you could still feel like you could contact the people that were like the people on those and have meaningful input on this, and still have a chance of, you know, like being able to talk with them or have input on the show, because even if they've got, you know, like 100,000 people listening, it's still a lot easier than trying to jump to the hoops of like there's no way that you can normally talk to most people that are in an old school media host or anything like that.
But I think it's also interesting, though, with podcasting, only the podcast host knows the numbers, right? So like, people don't know how many people have listened to my podcast unless I tell them. Right? And somehow we've like with YouTube, unless you get so many hits or so many views, you know, we don't quantify it as a success, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Whereas, you know, it's a success that, we've had a very strange online weird Instagram communication relationship for however months, and now we're actually having a conversation. That's a success.
Yes, that is. And that's actually, I think that's showing sometimes that how one of the positive things about this digital culture is you can start to get meaningful glimpses into what the person's all about, and then you can choose to continue that conversation at its own speed too. And then when you both feel like that's an appropriate fit, where it's rather than, I think sometimes I think people avoided having conversations before simply because they had no way of what they're walking into or whatever else. This way, if you can feel like you can get to, whether or not it's through Instagram or Facebook, sometimes you feel like you can get to know a person a little bit first.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Which, I really knew nothing about you. like nothing. Like, I didn't know what your face would look like, but when I saw you and the clothes, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's going to be Ryan. Yeah. The way he's like, patiently waiting for someone near the door, kind of looks like someone who would pull vegetables out of a garden. Yep.
Well, and I actually do. It's a bit of a conscious decision on my Instagram and that to not feature myself at all in it, because I've really found one of the reasons I've gotten into photography is with my dad being a little bit in my dad's shadow in that I've really wanted to do something of my own, like have something to call my own. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, by having not some pretentious, but my art, my photography, do a lot of the talking for me, I feel that's the primary motivator first of people, and there's an appreciation of that on its own first.
Totally.
And so, and it's nice to have the conversation with you first have been about that, and then figuring out who I was along with it. Because, there's literally no one else in Canada with our last name. So.
Oh, really?
It's literally a small pocket of us in Kamloops, and that's it. So.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So, and there's especially with the last time. The last election with my dad running at work, I just had more and more people start coming up to me like, is that your dad? I'm like, yeah, it is. And I'm very, very supportive of my dad in politics, because I know from knowing him and that he truly, his heart is definitely in the right place, and he's doing it for all the right reasons. It's because he genuinely very much loves Kamloops and wants to see this community thrive, and the people in it thrive as well.
Yeah.
And that means people of all walks of life and that.
I was very happy with the new city council. I just was pretty annoyed with the voter turnout.
I was too. I was actually quite pleased with the results. Yeah, with the slate, because I think it's really positive, and to have so many new faces and new faces that have a lot of good, interesting ideas. But it was really disappointing, because even when Danielle and I were at the polls, it seemed really busy at first. And then afterwards, to find out how miserable the turnout really was, that's one thing I really would like to see more, is more public engagement, and especially with young people as well.
Yeah, it's like I fucking worked so hard to try and get as many candidates as possible. And I had people trying to get me to do the school trustees too. And I was just like, I worked all that hard, and the turnout didn't increase or do it. And it's just like, regardless of what my motivations were, I still wanted to see a better turnout from a younger generation, because we have so much to gain from just looking at the Tronquil corridor and all the positive changes happening over here.
Oh, no, and I agree. I really much agree with that, because I think in the last 2 years, it's been really cool to see especially on the North Shore, the revival, and that's all been done almost entirely by younger people. Mm-hmm. And I think that could be one real positive thing about the absolutely outlandish prices of the Lower Mainland as far as living there, is that more people are going to be staying here and reinvesting in this community. And I think...
Are you in the city limits?
Yes, we're in the city. I live I don't... The farm's in the city limits, and then I live about another kilometer away from the farm.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I growing up there I think we were about 2 kilometers away from the limits out in West Side. And, we've been there since, out on Derry Road since 1994, 95, and actually even a year or two before that, but on a different spot on the road.
Yeah.
And having built a house there and grown up there, I really love West Side on its own, even as an area of Kamloops. And I think there's very few places and neighborhoods that are like that left anymore. And it's having lived in, in northern Alberta, and then even in Kelowna, there's no comparison to some of the neat little neighborhoods that we have here in Kamloops. And I think there's much more. I think people feel more connected to their neighborhood here than I think a lot of places have, and that is really refreshing to see.
Well, I think it's because you can like see your input in the neighborhood and how it will actually change it. Right?
Yes.
It's still that point where it's still getting molded, and hasn't really been decided who's going to allow it to fully mold. Like we can see ARPA developments really massaging the Tronquil corridor. Right? But there's all these other areas of Kamloops that like there isn't a defined influencer to take lead on said project or whatever it be, right?
Yes, and I agree with that too. And unfortunately, I mean, one of the nice things about the North Shore and that is because of the mix of commercial along with residential, there's more opportunity to have like that neat business, kind of like quirky, very local businesses, and that start to thrive, and for people, and especially young people, to get a start into things. Rather than, I mean, if you go up the hill, as much as I'm sure there's tons of very interesting and dynamic young people, but the only thing that exists up there is, you know, like retail and big box stores. So there's,
well, you look back in the, you know, the 80s or whatever, be like, you know, this was the hopping place to be, right? Like, it's revitalizing, right? And we're coming back, right? So I always point people to success of Redbeard, where we're sitting, right? Like,
no, exactly. Like, and it's little places like this that have really been the driver of these kind of things. It's not getting a new, like there's another new Starbucks or whatever else that's going to drive interesting things. It's local people that are hosting local events, and you know, whether or not it's music or things like that, or even just having something like hosting a podcast like this in their premises, and it's encouraging to see. So
yeah, like your barrier entry was a $500 camera, which is low.
Yes,
yeah, right? My barrier entry was I don't know. I haven't actually done the accounting. I suck at that part of my business. I got an accountant. He'll deal with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Performing Arts Center. Did you hear about? It was the Fawcett's are expected to make a new announcement about maybe a land donation or money donation.
I've heard it's more just like heard the rumors and everything, and that decision before was really disappointing for myself.
Absolutely.
Because I had a lot of issues with the way that it was. I think if we
it was bumper stickers.
Yes, and yeah, exactly. And if that campaign had been run differently, considering how many people actually support the idea when it's explained in the proper way, and it was just that the one side was able to gain a lot of traction with that bumper sticker kind of message.
It was a very militant messaging.
It
right?
was.
And it's not how I would have approached it, but that's because I'm a meme guy.
Yes.
Right?
And I think that's... yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great for Kamloops, and I think most people actually do agree with that. But I can totally understand that nobody wants to foot the bill for everything else, but there's ways to do things where it's not just the public coughing out more and more money too.
Yeah, it's modular in vision half the time too, right? It's a building.
Yes.
You know, I didn't start off with 2 mics. I started off with 1 microphone. And then I bought another microphone, and then I bought the recorder, and then right, like it's you build and you grow as the audience, the demand calls for it.
Yes, and that, I mean, I even started that with my photography, because I really started years before this with a point and shoot that I got for my birthday kind of thing, and then went up to a slightly better one, and then just learning and everything like that. Because I mean, when I first got my camera. For the first long while, I was trying to just figure out how to work it properly, and then the further I've gone on, I buy little extras here and there, and then and I've this year I think is going to be a really good year for both me and my partners and my hobbies / whatever else, is because up until the beginning of last year, both her and I worked seasonally.
Yep.
And it's really tough to do anything long term or really have anything like that when you're basically have no idea when your work is going to stop, and then your winter with on next to nothing. So
Yeah.
both of us now on stable footing. It's I'm really looking forward to being able to plan and do things this way too. So
Yeah, just trying to find like how it builds into your routine and makes it sustainable, right? Like I told you, I'm recording 4 podcasts or whatever today because I do them in short bursts. It's like,
yeah.
well, do I release them all as soon as I want, or do I stagger them out week by week by week by week so I can take some time off, right?
Yes,
But it's like, it's also a passion, so it's like you want to do as many as you can, but also, yes, you got to make sure your life exists and it's not all-consuming. You know, cameras can get addictive. I know that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, in that way, I mean, with the work schedule I have, it really limits what I do to the weekends mostly because I work evenings. So,
but Kamloops has a huge weekend warrior photography community.
Oh, it is. Yeah, then that's actually was one of the things that I really benefited from. For one, my mom is an excellent photographer all on her own, and then through that and countless photographers, there was really nice to have like a very encouraging group of people, and also be able to go online and on whether on Facebook or whatever else and look through that, and through that you can find the best places to go and just a little bit of mentorship, even if you're not one-on-one meeting with these people. You can just ask the questions, and yeah, I mean, and it's not surprising that there's a big photography scene here, considering how amazing the country is around here as well. I mean,
yeah, it's very interesting because each, you know, Vancouver, right, has the urban look, right? Vancouver has the out in the grasslands look, right? Like it's Kamloops is so striking and defined. It just stands out like bang, and
it does.
And that's why I thought it was really cool when there was this local music group that really showed and highlighted the mountains, the background, and the sands along the river, and as well as like Zach Abney's painting of the saxophonist on downtown, right? So it was like a good example of all this creative energy in one video. What small steps do you think Kamloops creatives can do or benefit in terms of like just taking their craft to the next level? Because like obviously you've got 10 years on me, right? So you got 10 years more wisdom of figuring out what the fuck is going on in your creative endeavors. Where do you think? What do you want to say to someone who's 10 years younger than you, who's a creative?
Well, and I'm using not only my own experience, but I've got right now 2 friends that have an even longer wealth of experience with doing creative things. Whether or not I've got a good friend that is both a music producer and creator here in town, and also a friend that has just recently started up a business making amazing wooden rings. And both of them have had amazing success, especially my friend that's been making these rings, because he's only been doing it about a year. But start making yourself a digital presence, and you have to be a self-promoter, and you don't have to be. Sometimes it works better to be like a shameless self-promoter, to be honest.
That's me, unfortunately.
Yeah, but you have to be, especially for like with podcasts and that, because you've got to stand out among a sea of. For myself, I've been just tried to just post as much content as I can, and then I really this year, funds allowing, want to start participating far more in local shows and that. You just got to get yourself out there as much as possible, because I've seen so many people that are amazing artists or musicians and everything like that, but because they either have the self-doubt or they just like they're shy or anything like that, they don't get the attention they deserve because they're amazing. And you've got to go out there and you've got to make yourself known, and and don't be afraid to do that, because the only thing that, I mean, nobody's going to ridicule you or anything like that for making the attempt, and the only thing that can happen is you'd have to try again.
Well, even if they do ridicule a little bit, their attention is going to be gone in 3 seconds.
Those
after.
kind of people really, you got to water off a duck's back with that kind of stuff, because really, I mean, those aren't people making any kind of educated sort of critique anyhow. So
yeah, I play the troll role, and when the time's appropriate. I'm very good at that, and built up that skin, which unfortunately you need to have in this day and age.
Yeah, you do, and that's the whole thing with getting yourself out there, is that sometimes you're going to have somebody make a shitty comment towards you, but if most people at least have an understanding. They know they're good at something. And no matter what, if you believe in yourself and you get out there, people will notice. And even if at first, when you're first developing it, as long as you do it without malice or anything like that, and you're not name calling or getting involved in those kind of things, people want to help. I mean, there's going to be the odd person that's going to be a jerk, but for the most part, it's a supportive environment around here. There's and especially if you're going and ask other people in town that have been doing it, they may not offer, like full mentorship, but at least they'll point you in the right direction.
Totally.
So, and I think getting out there and just doing, it could take a long time to catch on, but at least getting yourself out there some way is a great start.
Perfect. Yeah, and there's also Kamloops Art Council, which honestly I need to honestly join.
I am a member, but I must confess, other than tagging them every time I do a photo, I haven't done much with my membership yet, and I keep on meaning to, but because I actually have an aunt that's also an amazing local watercolors artist that's really well known.
Yeah.
And she's been very supportive and very much involved with the art gallery and the art scene here. And I know from that, just knowing her and that if you are into that realm of things, like whether or not it be painting or
the visual
arts, that get involved with the Arts Council, because they are incredibly supportive of young artists. And then you can do something like Art Exposed, which is every year.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap. I don't know.
Time crunch too, so.
Yeah, it is what it is. Well, Ryan, where can people find you on Instagram or reach out to you if they're at all interested in chatting?
I primarily only right now, best to reach me on Instagram, and it's at rmdudy, Dudy.
Awesome. Well, thanks for meeting with me, and agreeing to record and chat.
Yes.
And thank you for listening on in. Consider subscribing if you're new to hear more conversations I have with people in Kamloops. If you listen to my last episode, yes, I met with someone from Kelowna, the other K-town, but they were in Kamloops collaborating with some Kamloops creatives, so it still falls within my scope, I believe, at least. But still, hey, I'm hustling. Don't blame me for hustling. And leave an iTunes review. It helps. I haven't gotten one in a while. Help me. Thank you.